everybody, Amy with AmyFerrellArt, and I thought I would just get on here and do a little bit of a live video. Yesterday painted or actually early this morning I finished it. I painted a pair of old leather football cleats. And they were kind of just like hanging on a peg against like a wooden background kind of, scene. So today I am going to paint a pair of ballerina slippers in that same style, kind of a vintage look with an area highlighted on it to show the shadow, cast shadow on the wall and stuff. So that's what I'm going to work on today. So I'll get you down to my canvas. And so I've already got it all sketched out. And I also, I've already put some masking fluid on the areas that I want to preserve the white of the paper for the highlights. And this is, I like the PBO drawing gum. It's got the blue, it's tinted blue, and it's just a little easier to see. And I just apply it with one of these rubber tip tools. I believe I got these on Amazon, but to me that's the easiest because it cleans off real easy, and it applies very easy. So that's what I use to apply my masking fluid. And this is all dry, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I believe I'm going to wet and start working on the background first. Parts of the slippers that I have not put the masking fluid on, I'm just going to kind of be careful not to go too dark on that, because I am going to use some warmer colors that I don't necessarily want a whole lot of in my slippers. So I'm just going to spritz the paper. It's just so much quicker when you're working on a larger surface. And I'm just going to kind of spread out that water evenly so I don't have puddles. Really gotten into the nostalgic vintagey style lately. I recently completed a carousel, like when you were, well, they still have them around today, but at the carnivals they would have the carousels, and I can remember going as a child riding those carousels at the local carnival, and just brings back lots of memories. I have several other, I did a pool table with the billiard balls and the pool cue. I did a tackle box that I really enjoyed. That was a lot of fun. But I've got several other ideas that I want to do, but I thought I'll show you. This is my leather football cleats. It's just, real old, and I tried to really make it look like leather, and it's got the shadow on the wall. So we're just going to paint something, it would be really cute and children's rooms or a game room, or anywhere really. It would look great. But I thought we could do, it'd be nice to have those side by side if you wanted to display those together, or you could do them separate. One could be in a boys' room, one could be in the girls' room, but it's just that vintage feel to it, and that's just my favorite thing right now. I've got another one I have been working on. It's the soapbox cars. I don't know if everybody remembers those, but that's another one that I've got in the works. Another vintage inspired painting. So I think I've got this good and damp, so I am going to get some. So I'm using Da Vinci watercolors. I really love the vibrancy of these watercolors. They're the pigment's beautiful. They're professional grade. I've been really happy with them. So much so that I have become an affiliate for them. So in my description on my YouTube channel, I do have a link, and I do get a small commission if you like Da Vinci products and you want to purchase some of those paints through my link. It's no additional cost to you to use my link, but I get a little bit of a commission and helps keep me supplied to keep creating, keep painting, keeps me trying out, different things that come out. But I really do like their paints. Now this is just this is raw sienna that I'm using here. I just kind of want to get a wash over the whole area. Like I said, I'm not going to do a whole lot on the slippers themselves. I might go back later and put a little bit on there, but for now, I'm just going to kind of avoid those for the most part. I do use white gouache quite often in my paintings. I don't always, so I'm going to let that kind of dry. I don't always preserve the whites like I set out to. I mean, I always set out to do that, and I'm just going to lift a little bit because I want there to be almost like a spotlight on, kind of like I did in this one, how there's kind of a spotlight right here and kind of right here. I kind of want to imitate that, so I'm just going to lift a little bit of that color out. But it's definitely all about layering. And like I said, I set out to try to preserve whites, but it doesn't always work. I get carried away, I guess, and so I do use white gouache a lot to help bring back those highlights. So this looks real washed out, but I have some, you're not seeing a lot of that color down here, but I do have somewhat of an even application of this raw sienna, but it looks really light right here. So I'm going to let that kind of dry, and I'm going to start working on, let's go ahead and work a little bit on the shoes themselves. Now I am going to use, let me see what, I have a permanent rose color, and then I also have a buff titanium. So I am going to make a little bit of a mixture. I want a very muted pink. So that buff titanium is a little bit of an opaque color, but that's going to give me that that real pretty muted pink that I'm looking for. It's kind of a toned down pink, I guess. But since and I'm going to be careful, because if I go too close to the edge, because that's wet still, it's just going to bleed into it. So I'm just going to try to be careful, because I have to keep going. I don't like to sit and wait, which a lot of times that's exactly what you need to do, is just wait and let it dry. But since we're doing a video, I'm going to try to just keep moving and just be careful. Because I can always go back in and work on if anything bleeds just a little bit, like this right here, just kind of gonna lift a little bit in spots just to bring back a little bit of the highlight. I'm going to add a little bit of burnt umber. Kind of work on the inside. I'm sure they get dirty with the taking them on and off. So we're just going to show a little bit of color down here in the bottom, and I'm just using the very tip of my brush, almost a dry brush. I don't want a solid coverage, so I'm just doing a very light touch for now, because I can always go back and add more. Now I'm just kind of cleaning my brush, and I'm just going to lift a little here and there. I don't want it to have a solid coverage, and I want the edges to be softened. So now I can go back and add a little more of the pink with the buff titanium, or just the buff titanium. Just lifting a little. Gonna add just a little, some raw sienna. And I'm gonna do a little bit of an orange color. Just working on the inside of the shoe, just kind of trying to imitate a, you know, random staining of the footbed of the shoe. This was just a little neutral tint. I'm just going to use a little buff titanium. A little bit of that buff titanium and rose color. I'm going to use a little burnt umber for this seam here. Add some shading where there's folds in the fabric of the shoe. Just a little burnt umber. I want to soften those edges. Just a little clean water. Just kind of blending it in on the very end of it. to do a little on the very tip here where they get on their tiptoes and I imagine that is a pretty worn area. I'm going to use a little I've just drawn a blank of this color. Yeah, let me look and see. Payne's Gray. I don't know why I just drew a blank of that. Payne's Gray. Don't want a solid amount of that, but I do want some. I'm also going to use this, yeah, I'm going to have to look this color up too. It is Brown Matter. It is a reddish brown. It's a beautiful color. Just very lightly adding some to this, the shaded areas. A little more burnt umber. Just kind of put a little on there and then wet my brush and kind of work it in a little. So I can imagine that the ballerina shoes get lots of wear and tear, so I'm just kind of adding some wear and tear. And of course, when I take the masking off, after this is all dry, I'll remove the masking fluid and then, you know, I'll go back in there and kind of soften, because a lot of times where you put this, it can kind of leave a harsh line and you kind of want to blend around it. So I will go in there and add a little more, you know, do a little blending. I'm going to use a little bit of white gouache, just because I want a little more, a few areas in here of highlight. I don't want it to be quite so so solid of a stained footbed. Just kind of putting some gouache down. And now I'm going to go back and add a little color. A little more burnt sienna. A little, just a little neutral tint to mix in with that burnt umber, just for a few areas of a darker. Imitating a little bit of stitching. A little bit darker of a pink in some areas. Can't have light without dark. the burnt umber. I'm gonna leave that one alone for a little bit. I'm gonna, well, actually, I'm not gonna do that yet. Background's pretty dry, so let's work a little bit on that some more. Okay, let's see. I think I want to go with some of the brown matter, I think is what I'm gonna do. Just gonna spritz this area here. And I'm just going to get a very light amount. Just kind of go up and down with a flat brush to kind of imitate the grain of the wood. I don't want it totally blended, but just kind of a, not really a dry brush, but kind of letting the brush bristles do a lot of the work. And I'm just going to kind of just wet this area that I've already put this brown matter color on, and kind of borrow some of that color to this area that I don't want quite as dark. So I might add a little bit of that pink or that rose with that buff titanium for this lighter area back here. Just to kind of give it a little bit of a glow. that's glowing from the pink shoe. Dab a little bit of that. And I'll just continue to do this side. Just really a kind of a wash of the brown matter. Just start off in the area that I want it to be darker. Kind of on the edges. Add a little more up here. I've got my pups in here with me. If y'all hear snoring, it's them snoring. They're laying on the ground behind me, and okay, so I'm gonna kind of let that layer dry. We'll come back in and start working on this shoe over here. Just kind of repeat the same process. the buff titanium gives it such a pretty kind of old look. Just kind of get these areas back here where I want a little more color on the shoe. It's kind of in the shadow. Add a little burnt umber right down here in the where the shoes meet. And I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of Payne's Gray while that's wet, so that can kind of soften and blend just a bit. I just kind of want it right there in that deepest part down there where this one is casting a shadow. Just adding a little water, softening that up into the other shoe here. Lifting a little right here on this portion. Of course, this is going to be the tie, the ribbon that they use to tie the shoe onto their foot. So okay. Just darkening up some of the colors here. Use a little burnt umber for the creases. And I'll do a little burnt umber down on the very tip of this. And a little Payne's Gray. Add a little bit of Payne's Gray to some of those shadowed areas also. Let's go back and add another layer. That's kind of pretty much dried, so I want to deepen some of that shading. And I'm just kind of softening it so it just kind of blends in. Do a little more of that darker pink towards the edge of the shoe here. And this, of course, will be white, and then we'll blend it. I'm going to work a little bit on the inside here. A little bit of that satiny tie. Add a little buff titanium to knock down that, to mute that color a bit. Getting some clean water and kind of softening the edge a little, removing a little bit of that color. Do the same to the parts that are seen on this one. Soften that, add a little buff titanium as well, just so it's not so vibrant. I want it a very muted, soft color. Just going to continue that same process for the rest of these. Now these over here will be shaded, so they will be much darker. Those are the shadows. I have to go a little bit darker here, since we're going against the shoe, so we'll can see it. The only issue I have with the blue masking fluid is sometimes it kind of plays with your mind or with your eye on what, you know, the colors, because right now it looks like I've got pink and blue, so it's kind of, it's a little tricky. I just added a little bit of white gouache. I wanted to tone down that even more than the buff titanium. Just continuing with the these satin straps. And let's go back and work on this some more. I'm going to do some buff titanium with some of that pink in there. I'm going to add a little burnt umber. Just kind of touching it in spots so it's not such a solid coverage. Kind of letting the water spread it out a little and follow the little bit of the arch of the footbed to just kind of help it look a little more like the inside of a shoe. Also just trying to imitate where the foot comes in contact more with the shoe, because that's where you're going to have more staining. Like the arch is not something that really, you know, your foot doesn't usually come into contact a whole lot with the arch, so that will not be as stained as other areas. I need to get right in here. And I think I want a little Payne's gray, just a few areas of deeper. Maybe a little neutral tint. Just kind of let that water spread it out, softening the edges. Just a little neutral tint. Very little. I put just a little bit on, and then I get some clean water and kind of dab the edges just to soften it a bit. Just building up the layers of the color. Add a little white gouache for a little bit of a highlight here that I kind of got carried away with and didn't leave enough . It's definitely a lot of back and forth, adding color, adding layers. It's lots of washes. And this is just a little dry brush just to give it a little texture down in that footbed. do a little bit of some orange mixed with just a tad bit of that rose. I want a little more of a glow over here. Adding a little bit of that orange and rose mixture just to kind of brighten the few spots up a little bit, a little more of a glow. And I'm just using that orange by itself a little bit. Adding a little bit of a glaze of that orange just to kind of give this a little more of a glow in certain areas to enhance that look of a bright reflection. Okay, I'm going to leave those alone for a little bit, and I'm going to work on this wood up here. Just going to use a flat brush. I'm going to do a little bit of Payne's Gray. Just kind of using the bristles of the brush to kind of make, you know, the grain look, and then just coming back in with damp brush and just removing just a tad bit of it. Going to kind of let that dry a little bit. I think I'm going to add another layer over here. Careful not to get it on my slippers. use some burnt umber. Just kind of long strokes to imitate the wood grain. And just using a light touch. Starting at the top because that's where I want it to be the darkest. Come in with just a little more of a new gamboge, just to give it a little more brightness, and then some let's see, this is, I believe, Naples. Now I'm going to lift some of that, just leaving behind a little bit of that tint. Just dab a little bit of that off. Very lightly going down here to give it a little bit of a wood grain. I'm going to add a little more right on the end here. I want this to get darker as it goes off of, away from the almost a little bit of a vignette. I'm going to do the same on this side. A little bit of what's left on my brush to get this part here that I don't want quite as dark. I'm going to get some more of that burnt umber. I'll let that dry. So this is where I get anxious and want to remove masking fluid before it's ready to be removed. So I'm just gonna go back up here and work a little more on this. So let's see, I want some, maybe this new gamboge, a few spots. I'm gonna do some of this brown madder. Now I want to I've got two little like nails here that I want to enhance a bit. Cracks in the wood. Need to work on this hook. And I'm going to let all of this dry. And then I will continue working on this and I will post a picture. But I just wanted to come on here and show you part of my process. So go to my Facebook page or my YouTube channel and see the finished painting. I don't have a whole lot to go, but I am going to put a shadow, and then I'll put a shadow here, and then I'll work a little more on blending some of the highlights. Actually, I might be able to remove some of this. Now, so what I do to remove, I just kind of rub it off. You can use an eraser or just rub it off with your finger. Just gently kind of pull it off. And so then you see it has preserved the whites, but it is something, you know, now I need to blend it because that just looks kind of harsh. So I'll just take some of the color that's next to it and just kind of soften and you know, work with it until it doesn't look like just an irregular white area. And, you know, I might have to add a little white gouache also, just to bring back some, you know, very specific areas of a highlight. Most of the time the highlight is not going to be just a very stark white. There's just going to be varying shades of lightness. I'm going to use some burnt umber just right on the very edge to kind of clean up that clean the shape up a bit. Just kind of adding another layer of some of the darker areas of the footbed. Just a little bit of white gouache just to kind of make this a little bit softer of a highlight there. White gouache really, in some instances, adds to the luminosity, and in this instance, that's really helpful. It just kind of makes it look like it's highlighted and glowing. So add a little more to this tip, the toe. It's kind of softening most of that bright white. You want a little bit in there, but it doesn't need to be quite so bright. just a little more. Deeper color just in some spots. Just a little bit of raw sienna to kind of give it a little bit of a glow. I want to do a little gouache, just kind of right in the middle of that lighter area to Give it that final glow. Soften the edges. And now just a final, really bright. Do a little bit of whitewash here to give it a nice highlight down the middle. I'm going to work on this up here a little more. Remove that masking fluid, and I'm going to go ahead and remove all of this masking fluid. It's all pretty dry. There we go. Now I'm gonna work on this wood grain. I'll do a little brown matter. Almost a bit of a dry brush, just brings out the texture and makes it look a little more like a wood grain. I'm gonna do some burnt umber. Brighten that up a little and do a little burnt sienna. Now just going to kind of remove a little. Add a little Payne's gray. And I'm going to add a little buff titanium. Gives it that weathered look. Add a little more Payne's gray. A little more buff titanium. I'm going to let that kind of sit there. I'm going to add some of this shadow down here. Go in with some burnt umber first. Now I'm going to add some Payne's gray. Just had to extend the size of the wood piece a bit because I got my shadow out just a little too far, so always making adjustments. Softening the shadow, the darkest part closest to the object up there. Just going to turn this, make it a little bit easier for me to get a straight line. So I want to soften the very edge of the shadow. the shadows of the silk ties for the silk laces or ties or just want to make them nice and soft, using a very light touch. It's a damp canvas. It's not real wet, but I just added a little more water, kind of blending in where it attached. Now I'm just going in with some Payne's Gray. Of course, I want the darkest part of the shadow right next to the shoe. Just build up that shadow in layers. I'll let this layer dry and then I'll do some washes. Just keep it soft. Soften that edge. Just dipping it in some clean water and just kind of scrubbing at the very edge. I think I'll just let that rest a bit, let it dry, kind of work on this other shoe a little more. Use some white gouache to soften this silk tie. Adding a little burnt umber right at the where it meets the shoe. Gonna need to show a separation of these two here, so I'll start with some burnt umber. Just kind of softening that area where I remove the masking fluid, and then we'll go back with a little white gouache and kind of soften. I don't always use the masking fluid, just because, you know, you do have to kind of add some, you know, work at the edges and stuff, so it's not quite such a stark, artificial looking, you know, line versus a more organic, I guess, I don't know. Add a little, just do some burnt umber.
What? What? No.
And a little white gouache just to tidy up some of this area. work on this other strap over here.
On the Wikipedia, US has 69 out of 85 creative associations, and the next up is Canada with 675.
It's adding a little buff titanium. Add a little more burnt umber just to this in between shadow area. And just a little bit of neutral tint to the darkest part here. Do a little more on the very tip of the alternating the colors. And I'm just going to do a little bit of a wash of some burnt umber. Add a little white gouache for some really nice highlights. Just adding another layer of this shadowy, dirty area inside the shoe. Okay, so now I need to work on this up here. So this is the hook that is in this piece of wood that the laces are attached to. Just trying to create a shadow. I want it to be a shadow that looks like that's what it is. Kind of add some water and soften. Just going to use some Payne's Gray and just add some water and soften it. Kind of focus most of the pigment into the middle so the sides still kind of look soft. Add just a little bit of burnt umber also to that. Just a little more Payne's gray. Add a little burnt umber to that to kind of warm up that shadow a little. Soften that edge a little. Add a little bit of this reddish brown blue. You okay? Okay? Well, the puppies were dreaming. Just adding a little bit of this reddish brown to this shadow. I'll let that dry. Clean up this edge here. wash to this hook. Now I need to make it look like the silk straps are tied. Yeah, let that dry a little and then we'll work on that a little more. Do a little more to this. Kind of add some brighter areas up here. Just using the very tip of the brush, a very light touch. Just kind of adding some wood grain. play around with the colors till you kind of get whatever wood grain look you want. Just go back and forth with lighter and darker. Add a little more of a shadow. Now I want to add a little more here. Just going to wet this. Start with some burnt umber. I'm going to come back in with some Payne's Gray. Do a little bit of that reddish brown. little bit of burnt umber. Just putting those final touches. Just making sure my shadows look correct. Home stretch. Some finishing touches on this ribbon. Just cleaning up edges and making it look a little neater. Almost there. Just wanting to put some shading. A little bit of shading on the straps. that's about gonna do it. I might take a picture and then fiddle with it a little more. So I usually can tell better once I've taken my picture, but I think for the most part I will be done. Add a few really nice highlights there. Maybe a few. Alrighty, so I'll work a little bit on that. I might darken this up just a little bit more, but that is our ballet slippers. And thank you all so much for joining and sticking with it. And like and subscribe. Follow me on YouTube, AmyFerrellArt, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.